Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 7, Episode 17, The Friars Club. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I'm doing okay. Just having a busy week, but good busy. I'll start out with some Seinfeld IRL, some real life Seinfeld moments, either that happened on the show or I feel could have happened on the show, would have been a good plot for one of the characters. So these, I have two of them, and both did not happen on the show, but I feel like could have happened on the show. So the first one, this past weekend, I had a mammoth migraine, just unrelenting. I get them from time to time, and they're usually manageable, but they're awful. They're always awful, and they stress me out, and I hate them, of course. No one loves a migraine. But this one was just would not let me relax, or it just wouldn't let up. So I actually got a little bit scared because some of the symptoms were just lingering longer than usual. And I was like, well, I don't think I need to go to like an ER or even an urgent care, but I just need to talk to someone. So in this day and age, we now have virtual health or telehealth. So I scheduled a virtual doctor's visit. And so when it came time to connect with this doctor, she was in the midst of her children, I believe. I think there was more than one, having meltdowns. So while I'm trying to talk to her, she's trying to conduct this visit, I'm hearing a baby or a toddler or children, I'm just hearing children screaming. And she's like, oh my God, I'm sorry. Just, can you hold on for a second? And it's also like, I'm suffering from a migraine right now. Like, I can't listen to piercing screams. This isn't ideal. And she just wasn't able to focus. And anyway, I don't know. I just thought it was sort of like a delicate genius kind of thing, because she even had the nerve to say, oh God, I'm so sorry. You know, I'd put my son in another room, but you took so long to get on this call that I took him out again. And I was like, wait, hang on, what? So it's my fault. Okay. Which I think there was just something with the system, because I literally got on as soon as I got the text saying your virtual visit can start. I clicked on it right away. I was doing nothing else except laying under the covers in the dark. So that was kind of annoying. I'm like, okay, well, also maybe don't have your child screaming nearby when... And look, I'm a mom. I mean, I'm sympathetic. I remember those days when they're very little and they need you, but maybe don't take the call. I don't know how the whole thing works, but something tells me if you're alone at home with your kids and they're being rowdy, maybe you don't take the call. And if you do take the call, don't blame the patient who's suffering from a migraine, which you can see on the order, I bet. Like, I bet she could see, oh, this person has a terrible, terrible headache and is in distress. Maybe I shouldn't have my child screaming off camera. And maybe I shouldn't blame this person for the reason my child's in the room. Anyway, I just thought that would have been like a delicate genius kind of offshoot. Or just like, hey, this is my time. Can you get your kid out of here? Again, I don't want to be like bashing a mom trying to juggle everything, because believe me, I know what that's like, and I sympathize with that. But at the same time, I was kind of like, that's kind of not my problem. My problem is my medical issue right now, and your job is to help me. At any rate, that was my Seinfeld IRL moment, I thought. As I was suffering, I was like, oh, this could be something I talk about on the podcast this week. My other Seinfeld in real life moment, this woman, okay, yes, it's happening, gym. I'm not going to apologize anymore, guys. I go to the gym. Whatever. So in the morning, this morning and yesterday morning, there's this woman at the gym who is in the same row of treadmills that I use. So I usually before a class, I'll just walk on the treadmill for like, I do a brisk walk for like a half an hour, get some steps in. And this woman, I was noticing she had set up like all this stuff. First of all, she had like a bunch of stuff on this treadmill that was right next to me. I think she had a protein shake in one of the cup holders, her water bottle in the other, a big duffel bag on the side, which is not allowed actually. I think about 18 towels just kind of draped everywhere. She starts the treadmill and then she goes and walks 2 rows up where the ellipticals are. And then she puts a bunch of towels on that. So I think she was claiming that. And then she proceeded to, put this treadmill on like a really high speed. Like not even just a jog pace, like a full run. But she would have her feet on the sides. So she's not on the belt, but it's like racing by. So she's got the belt racing between her legs. She's standing and then she's dancing. She's just, you can't see me, but she's dancing. She's doing these moves like kind of pumping her fists. And she's really into it. She's clearly listening to something. I should mention she does have AirPods in, so she's not just hearing music in her head. Anyways, she's listening to something, and then every maybe 10 seconds, she'd run really fast on the belt, and then get off of the belt again, put her legs on the side, and then just dance and dance and dance, and then go back and run for like maybe 7 seconds, and then go back and run, and then she kept the belt going, kept this treadmill on, and then she proceeded to get off and then walk on over to the elliptical that she had put all her towels on and started doing the elliptical there while pumping her arms up and dancing and just like kind of boogie, like her butt's just going side to side, like kind of like, borderline inappropriately. It was fascinating. I just thought this is something, just kind of, claiming 2 machines, not really using them very much. I didn't even see her break a sweat. She was just doing this like slow dancing in her own world. It was very interesting. And I'm trying to be not so snarky and not so judgmental. And I was like, I would probably put her late 50s, maybe early 60s. So I'm like, you know what? She doesn't give a shit. She is doing whatever is getting her moving. And if that means some bizarro way of claiming machines and just dancing on a machine and not really using it for what it's for, you know what? Do it, lady. Do it. And if that gets you your exercise for the day, more power to you. But anyway, I just thought, all the stuff at the health club and Seinfeld episodes, that definitely could have been something. She did wipe down the machine though. So that would definitely not be an issue with this woman. She wiped them down. So there was definitely no George faux pas with that. So those were my Seinfeld IRL moments. Other than that, something that's been really making me just happy, looking forward to the end of the day with my daughter. We started watching Schitt's Creek together. I've seen the whole series. I watched it a few years ago and just fell in love with it. I think it's probably one of the funniest comedies I've ever seen in my entire life. It's just brilliant on so many levels. I highly recommend it to all of you listeners out there. If you like Christopher Guest movies, you will love this show. It's got the same feel. It's not mockumentary style, but it's just the zany humor. It's broad at times, but it's also really heartfelt. One of the greatest love stories I have ever seen, film, television, ever, is in this show, Schitt's Creek. I won't go into it, so no spoilers here. But anyway, my daughter's 13. There's swears and everything in it, but both my kids are very familiar with cursing. But it's just been so fun. From the first 5 minutes, we're both like, she and I are just laughing so hard together, and I'm just treasuring it. As your kids get older, it's the natural it's the natural progression of them just, separating from you. They don't really want to hang out with you as much anymore. And that's definitely been happening with my daughter, as it should. But we always do try and come together at the end of the night, before bed, and just watch something together and bond over, something we watch. And so I just had this idea the other day. I was like, wait a second. I'm like, I know her sense of humor and I know she would love this show. And she had heard of it. So she was like, yeah, let's start watching it. And so we've just been doing that this week. And it's just been amazing. It puts me in a good mood. I've been in a funk. I'm not going to lie. I talked about how I wanted to start this year with more positivity, and there's been a few blows already this year. So, and it's been affecting me more than I want, but it's really pissing me off. So anyway, I'm definitely not letting myself get too deep down a hole of despair or self-pity or any of that shit. So, speaking of shit, Schitt's Creek is really helping me pull myself out, and especially icing on the cake, watching it with my daughter, laughing with my daughter. There's nothing better. Okay, let's get into this episode, The Friars Club. The synopsis for this episode is as follows. Jerry claims that acrobatic gypsies stole a jacket he had borrowed from the Friars Club. George's wedding is postponed again. Kramer takes a cue from Leonardo da Vinci and begins sleeping in 20-minute increments. Susan sets up Jerry with her best friend, while Elaine thinks a coworker is feigning deafness to get out of work. Kramer's girlfriend, Connie, has mafia ties. George realizes he's running out of conversation with Susan. This episode was written by Dave Mandel. All right, we start out in the street and at Jerry's place. In the street, we see George dancing with glee. He's yelling, June, June, it's June, June. And he almost gets hit by a car in the middle of the street. Then we see George enter Jerry's apartment and he's busting. He tells Jerry how the catering hall screwed up. The wedding has to be moved to June. Oh, he's so excited and Jerry's happy for him. And in other great news, he tells Jerry, Susan's best friend Hallie broke up with her boyfriend. Oh, Jerry's definitely interested. Wheels are in motion. George is so excited at the prospect of this working out. That means vacations together, movies together, dinners together. And Jerry suggests they go to dinner at the Friars Club because he's thinking about becoming a member. Kramer peeks in and asks Jerry to wake him up in 20 minutes. Oh, you taking a cat nap? No, he says, this is evolutionary. He's been reading a book about Leonardo da Vinci, and he read about how the master only slept 20 minutes every 3 hours. So if Kramer does this, there'll be extra days for him to be awake, and he'll have lived the equivalent of 105 years. And Jerry's like, oh, think about all the things you can get done. Oh, I got a lot of things in the hopper. Oh, he's got a big hopper. All right, next we're at J. Peterman. We're in a conference room meeting, and J. Peterman introduces the group to a new person, Bob Grossberg from Business Affairs. And he tells him he has a baptism by fire for him. Elaine turns to a colleague and says, poor bastard. J. Peterman gives him the assignment to handle all the fact-checking and copy editing for the catalog. But Bob has a hearing aid. He keeps saying, I'm sorry, what? What was that? Finally, Mr. Peterman just gives up and assigns it to Elaine. You do it. My take on this scene, I find it so funny that when Elaine leans over to her colleague and says, poor bastard, the guy has basically no reaction. And I feel like this has happened a few times, or it's going to happen a few more times, where Elaine, no one likes Elaine in this job. Whenever she leans over or, oh, we all have intense malaise, they all just kind of look at her and they're like, whatever. I don't know why I like that element to it. Elaine's trying to be all chummy and they're like, no, we're not interested. There's really not much to this scene except to establish Bob's deaf and, not hearing anything when work gets assigned. And then it all gets dumped on Elaine. It's a very simple and funny premise. All right, next we are at the Friars Club. The foursome, George, Susan, Jerry, and Hallie, are at the host stand. And Jerry says, oh, we have a reservation. And the maitre d' says, yes, but Mr. Seinfeld, all gentlemen are required to wear a jacket. Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry says. Hallie rips on him. How embarrassing this must be for you. And he says, well, you just bought yourself your own dinner. The maitre d' says no problem, and he takes Jerry with him and exits. George, he's just giddy, so giddy, telling Hallie, he's funny, isn't he funny? And he greets some friars on the way out. Friars. I don't know. I just love George's mood here. When George is giddy, it's just as delightful as when he's really upset to me. Jerry returns with a loner jacket on, and he's like, oh yeah, it looks pretty good. I like this little thing here, this little crest on the side. And so then they head to the table. We see this shot of them at the table, the four of them. George and Jerry are talking to each other. Hallie and Susan are talking to each other, and each conversation is independent of the other pair. The men and women are not talking to each other at all. Hallie is played by Samantha Smith. The writers said that this may have been her very first TV role and that this was one of her first auditions after she moved to LA. Pretty good luck. And I did confirm that. Yeah, her first credit on her IMDb page was this episode. And since that episode, she had appeared in Wings, Caroline in the City, and more recently, she was a regular in the series Supernatural. I think she's cute. They give her a little bit more personality than most of Jerry's girlfriends. Not a ton, but a little bit. I like that she gets to, dig into Jerry a little bit in this scene. How embarrassing. Like that usually doesn't happen with any girlfriend. So I think that's a really nice touch. Maybe they decided to do that because it's not just some random girl. It is Susan's best friend. So maybe they're like, hey, let's give her a little bit more personality. But yes, overall, perfectly fine performance. I don't know if that's the theme song, but we have a jacket watch. It's been a long time. Actually, since season 6, episode 9, that we've had a jacket watch, but we finally have one. Now, for those of you who may not know what jacket watch is, I took it upon myself to count the incidents of a jacket plot in Seinfeld, and this was all started because of an episode of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. That's Jerry Seinfeld's interview show that he has on Netflix. And he interviewed a comedian named Neil Brennan who told Jerry that he didn't really watch Seinfeld. He's like, look, I just want to let you know I never did. And Jerry's like, I don't give a shit, even though I think he did give a shit. Jerry's ego is just that big. But anyway, Neil Brennan was like, I maybe have seen like 4 or 5, but every time I watched an episode, you guys were worried about a jacket. Now, even as I say it now, like I have to repress my laughter because it made me laugh so hard because I was like, that is such an amazing observation by a really funny comedian who's only seen a handful of Seinfelds. So I took it upon myself to just start counting the episodes with jacket plots in them. So this is our 14th jacket watch incident. And it is the Friars Club Crested Blazer. I'm very excited about this, if you can't tell. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry enters to find Kramer asleep on his couch. He's like, oh, this is nice. The door slam wakes Kramer up. Morning. It's 10:30 p.m. Kramer's excited. Yeah, see, now I have the whole night ahead of me. And he compliments Jerry on his jacket. Jerry can't believe it. He forgot to give the jacket back at the Friars Club. Kramer starts pouring a bowl of cereal. It's the most important meal of the day. It's breakfast for him. So this Da Vinci sleep is working out. Kramer loves it. He's percolating. He's mossy. And he has an idea for a restaurant that only makes peanut butter and jelly. What's it called? PB&J's. What do you think? Jerry thinks he needs more sleep. Jerry asks about his date with Connie, and he's like, this girl is strange. She never wants to leave the apartment. It's like she doesn't want to be seen with me. Oh, now you're being ridiculous. And Kramer leaves with his bowl of cereal. Jerry's like, no milk? Oh, I'll be back. Just a weird thing that they did there. I just love it, though. All right, next we're in Elaine's office. Elaine is just working and working and working. We see that she's definitely got a lot of work dumped on her thanks to Bob. You wouldn't think I have a take on this scene because it's just that, but I actually do. And my take is that it goes on for way too long. It needed to be like 4 seconds, and I think it goes on for like 8 seconds, guys. Ugh. All right, next we're in Jerry's bedroom. Kramer wakes Jerry from a dead sleep and scares the hell out of him. It's 4 a.m. and Kramer's bored. I have all this free time. You want to do something? Jerry's like, no. Well, what am I going to do? All right, next we're in Elaine's office. Jerry's there to go to lunch with her, but she says, I can't. I'm stuck here working because of stupid Bob Grossberg. Elaine tells Jerry there's something really suspicious about him. Every time Peterman tries to assign him any work, he acts like he can't hear, and then it all gets dumped on me. Jerry's like, oh, you think he's faking? She's like, I'm not sure, but I would like to get my hands on that earpiece and see if it's real. Bob then peeks his head in and says hi. Elaine tells him, hey, I'm kind of swamped. Could you give me a hand with some of this work? He leans in. I'm sorry, what? I'm kind of swamped. He looks down at his tie and he says, oh, thank you. Having lunch with Mr. P. I better get going. And he exits. Did you see that, Jerry? He's like, that was him? I thought he'd be taller. All right, Elaine says. She tells Jerry to leave. She's got a lot of work to do. Jerry returns her sandwich to her desk and leaves. My take on this scene, it's a lot of explaining in the scene, just clues Jerry in as to why she's so swamped with work and can't go to lunch. I just love that Jerry starts eating her sandwich. It's a small example of both how close they are as friends, but also how fucking inconsiderate Jerry is. I mean, she's so stressed out. She's so busy. No time for lunch, yet he takes the sorry little sandwich she's trying to stuff in her face in order to meet her deadlines. Like, Jerry doesn't give a shit. He's like, I'm just going to eat your sandwich. When Bob comes in, it's funny. I think Rob Schneider's really funny. I enjoy him in this episode. He's not like a top comedic actor of mine or anything, but whenever he does like pop up in a movie or a show, he always makes me chuckle. I do also have a soft spot for him because my mom was a huge fan of his when he had his sitcom Men Behaving Badly. Now, my parents watched that. I never watched it, but my dad would always tell us how hard my mom would laugh at like literally everything Rob Schneider did. Like, I think we all have those actors. Like for me, I think it's Zach Galifianakis or like a Jack Black. It's like anything they do is funny to me. Like they could just be sitting there and somehow I'll just be laughing. So I think Rob Schneider was that with my mom. And my dad's like, doesn't matter what he's doing. She just laugh and laugh. It's so funny. Anyway, I never watched Men Behaving Badly, like I said, but I've always remembered that my mom was a huge Rob Schneider fan. All right, next we're in the bathroom at Peterman, and Jerry enters to find Bob at the urinal, really just, hardcore peeing. You can just, I don't know, that face. Okay, just an example of Rob Schneider making me laugh. Like, what? Why is your mouth open like that? There's something very disgusting about it. Anyway, Jerry decides to test Bob's hearing. So he keeps saying, hey, Bob, hey, Bobby, over here, Bob. Oh, Bob. Bob does turn around, but it's only after he's done and zipping up. And he says an awkward hello to Jerry. Next, we're back in Elaine's office. Jerry returns and Elaine's so annoyed. Like, Jerry, I've got a lot of work to do. No. I saw that Bob in the bathroom and I tried to test his hearing. Elaine stands up and she's super interested. Get out! What happened? So Jerry says he sort of flinched a little bit and kind of moved his head. Could have been on the zip up. So you don't know anything? I guess not. Good job. My take on this scene, I think this is a really funny exchange. We get a get out smack with some papers, not a shove, but still funny. And I do like these moments when smug Jerry realizes he isn't all that helpful. We usually see Jerry very, much the logical one. He's usually the one in control, laughing or mocking at others. But I like when they give him these types of moments where he's got nothing to help and he kind of has to realize that on his own. And even more when Elaine gets to point it out to him. That's really even more fun. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. George enters. He's very excited. Last night, was that a great night? Jerry agrees and he thinks, yeah, Hallie could be it. George reiterates how great she is. And Jerry's like, well, I don't really know. I didn't really talk to her. Oh, she's smart. Trust me. Whatever. George is like, we could be like the Gatsbys, were they all hanging around, best friends? That doesn't sound right. George tells him that we're all going to go to that show that Hallie's been working on, the Flying Sandoz Brothers. Beautiful, Jerry says. George tells him the show is at 7:30. Jerry asks George to walk him to the Friars Club. George is just continuing on this whole train. Oh, there's an open apartment in our building if you and Hallie want me to hold it. Jerry's looking for the Friars jacket to return, but he can't find it. Kramer enters and Jerry's like, oh, thanks a lot for that 4 a.m. wake-up call. Then he finds out that Kramer actually wore the jacket out and he got it dirty. It's at the cleaners. He's like, yeah, somehow I dozed off and woke up in a pile of garbage. Jerry tells George, well, I hope I have enough time to return it before the show. He turns back to Kramer, who has fallen asleep standing up. He yells in his face, hey! Oh, watch out, boy. All right, next we're at Bob's office. Elaine approaches the doorway behind him and asks him for some help with a bunch of boxes. Of course, he doesn't react or acknowledge her. She keeps trying. Bob, Bob. Then she walks closer to him and tests his hearing. She says, I want you so bad, Bob. You turn me on so much. You're so damn sexy. Oh, I'm starting to unbutton. Anything getting through, Bob? Now, while she's doing that, Peterman walks by and hears what she's saying and reacts like, ooh, okay, and keeps walking. My take on this scene, all right, finally some comedy for Elaine. I mean, I like this scene. Peterman walking by is expected, another misunderstanding. And I'm noticing a lot of the Peterman storylines with Elaine entail some sort of misunderstanding. The opium, Bob, dating the guy from the office that she made out with. It's a little bit of a theme here. All right, next we're at the theater. The Flying Sandos Brothers show. George, Susan, and Hallie are in that front little balcony box. Jerry arrives late, still wearing the jacket, and he said he wasn't ready on time. He'll have to return it afterwards. George is still giddy with the foursome. He's like, sure. These are great seats, huh? I feel like Lincoln. Yeah, let's hope this night turns out a little better. The Flying Sandos Brothers then come out onto the stage and start performing. All right, next we're in Kramer's apartment. His girlfriend Connie is over and he asks, are you sure you don't want to go out to the movies or something? Oh, no, Cosmo. Just want to be here with you. Oh, that's a bold adventure. And she starts kissing his neck. Oh, this is a risky business. I'm all at Twitter. I don't know why. I would be okay if I never saw Kramer kissing or making out with anyone. Even if he's not doing the kissing, I don't know why. It just does nothing for me, and it's creeps me out. The actress here is Lisa Arch, also known as Lisa Kuchel, who plays Connie. She got her start in Mad TV, also appeared in many other television shows and movies since the early 90s. I have enjoyed her a lot in Curb. She plays Cassie, who is the wife of cousin Andy, played by Richard Kind. She is so fantastic, so hilarious. And she's fine as Connie, nothing really funny to her, but they were going for a very sort of Marissa Tomei, New York, My Cousin Vinny type character. And Lisa Arch does a very good job doing that. All right, next we're back at the theater. The Flying Sandos Brothers are finishing a number. They start a new one where they climb onto each other and land in that box where Jerry and everyone is sitting. One of them asks to lend a hand with our next trick. And Jerry says, I don't think so. Come on, lend me your jacket. My jacket? Come on. The crowd starts cheering Jerry on. He says, all right. He hands over the Friars jacket. And the guy says, agraba, and throws the jacket over the balcony, literally into another guy's lap, and everyone cheers. All right, next we are in Kramer's apartment. Connie is having a good old time underneath Kramer. Oh, Cosmo. But then he's not moving. And she thinks, oh my God, he's dead. She grabs the phone and calls someone named Tommy and says how some guy dropped dead on top of her. And she can't call the cops because Joey might find out. Tells him, I'm stuck. You gotta help me. All right, next we're back at the theater. The four are now backstage, and Jerry goes up to the brothers' dressing room. He asks the guy who answers the door for his jacket. And the guy's like, jacket? What jacket? Acts like he has no clue what Jerry's talking about. And Jerry's like, look, it's not even my jacket. It belongs to the Friars. Sorry. And the guy shuts the door. Hallie tells Jerry that she's sure the jacket will turn up. I'm sure it won't, Jerry says, all pissed off. Don't worry, she says. I'll get the jacket back. All right, George says. She'll get the jacket back. Come on, let's all go for some coffee. Jerry doesn't want to. He's a little tired. And Susan says, George, we'll go. All right, next we're at Monk's, where George and Susan are sitting having coffee in silence. George is trying to make some conversation. Oh, I broke a shoelace today. Oh, I can get shoelaces for you tomorrow. What color? Brown. Maybe a black. The waitress comes by. More coffee? No, check. George wants to get the hell out of there. All right, next we're in Jerry's hallway. He's arriving home and locking his door when he sees a couple of guys carrying a huge sack out of Kramer's place. And that nut is always up to something, Jerry says. We cut to a shot of a bridge where the car pulls up and the guys take Kramer's body out of the trunk and throw it over the side, and it lands in the river where Kramer wakes up underwater and freaks out. Mama! All right, next we're in Elaine's office. J. Peterman walks in and tells her, I think I've been working you too hard. And he got her tickets to the Flying Sandos Brothers magic show. And she is so appreciative. Thank you so much, Mr. Peterman. And he tells her that the tickets are for tonight, so she and Bob can knock off early to get ready. Huh? And he tells her that he overheard everything she said, and surely she wasn't making fun of his handicap. Oh, that kind of cruelty could be grounds for dismissal. Of course, Mr. Peterman, she says. My take on the scene, not much to say here, just that Elaine has been caught messing with Bob, and now she must go with him to the show. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry gets off the phone in big trouble with the Friars Club after taking the jacket. Not only is he going to get charged $800, but that he has to deal with Pat Cooper. And he wonders, what kind of show is this Flying Sandos? So you just take a jacket and you throw it over the balcony? Well, I've never heard of that. It's a little unusual, George says. Then George invites him over for dinner on Saturday at his place, just the four of them. Jerry's a little soured. Hallie didn't seem too concerned about the jacket. She's very concerned, George says. She said she was going to get it back. Now, if she gets it back, you'll have to de-sour and sweeten. Jerry isn't sure he will, but he'll try. You don't try, George says. I want to go back to when we were the Gatsbys. I still don't know what that means, Jerry says. Kramer enters, soaking wet, tells him how he woke up in the Hudson River in a sack. Connie tried to kill him. She doesn't want anyone else to have me. He says he's going to call the cops. All right, next we're at the Friars Club. Jerry and George are recognizing famous folks in the club from the lobby. Pat Cooper comes up as so pissed. What the hell, are you some kind of idiot? Jerry tries to explain with forgetting the jacket, and then a gypsy took it. Oh, Pat Cooper can't believe it. Oh yeah, New York is full of gypsies. Well, George tries to defend Jerry, and Pat Cooper cuts him off. Are you in show business, or are you an entertainer? No. Then what am I talking to you for? And he tells Jerry to bring the jacket back tomorrow. They're about to leave when they see one of the Sandos brothers in the restaurant performing, and he's wearing Jerry's jacket. So they try to go in, but they get stopped because they aren't members. And he try to explain about this guy wearing the jacket, but they get thrown out. Next, we're at the theater. Elaine and Bob are sitting in the private box. Bob goes in to make a move, which is basically barreling his face into her breasts. She pushes him off twice, telling him to get a hold of yourself. And then he gets really uncomfortable and leaves. My take on this scene. Okay, I have some thoughts. I'm so confused. Are we to think that Bob did hear her when he was sitting in the office and she was saying all those seductive things to him? Is that why he makes this incredibly weird and creepy move with her? I never really understood. Like, is he actually faking the deafness or not? Now, there is a deleted scene slash alternate ending that might explain this, but I'll get into that when I get into the extras. But are we supposed to think, okay, he's been faking the deafness this whole time just to get out of work, but so he does hear Elaine, and so that's why he feels he can make this move? So I'm just very confused. I'm leaning towards that he can hear, and so he does think Elaine is interested in him and says, I'm going to smash my face into her boobs because maybe that's worked for him in the past. I don't know. It's so gross and so bizarre. It's such a weird scene in general. But I'll get more into my thoughts about this scene in a little bit. Next, we're backstage at the theater. Jerry and George are hunting for that brother they saw at the Friars Club, and they bump into him, and he says, hey, that's my jacket. And the guy says, no, it's my jacket. And they both pull and push on him, and they get the jacket from him, and he starts yelling, Agraba, Agraba. And then Jerry looks at it and he's like, I don't think this is a jacket. It's got a moose on it. A moose? Hallie has seen this whole thing from her, I guess, office door. I don't know. And she's like, yeah, that's not the jacket. This is the jacket. And she pulls out a jacket from behind the door. She says it got a little dirty, so they wanted to clean it before they gave it back. Oh, that's nice. Jerry and George are totally appeased now. And George is like, hey, why don't I call Susan? We'll get some coffee. Hallie's pretty soured. She's like, I'll see you at the wedding. Next, we're back in that theater box. Elaine is there alone because Bob has left after his boob move. And she looks on the floor and finds his earpiece. She's like, oh, this is what I've been wanting. So she puts it in her ear. Meanwhile, Jerry and George are making their way out of the theater. George is upset about how his dream of that foursome fell apart, and now he's bitter. And then the Flying Sandoz brothers see the two of them backstage and start chasing them. Jerry and George run away and end up going through an emergency exit, which causes an alarm to sound. We are back to Elaine here when that alarm sounds, and hearing that through the earpiece is extremely loud. She collapses to the floor. There's a tag to this episode. Cops have come to Connie's door. Connie opens the door and says, Kramer, you're not sleeping with the fishes? Yeah, I guess I woke up. They try to arrest her, but she wants to call her lawyer. So we see her call Jackie Childs, and he's like, Kramer. Once he hears Kramer's name, he doesn't want anything to do with it. So my take on that last scene in the theater, I mean, for an episode that has very little Elaine comedy for JLD to play with, we get like a Michael Richards level physical comedy action here with that alarm going off and her wearing that earpiece. It's done so well. Always makes me laugh. I'll talk more about how JLD felt about doing this physical gag in the extras, but it's just so great. I love her choice that she doesn't make a sound. I mean, she doesn't shriek or yell from the noise. It's like, it's so loud she can't even make a noise. She just reacts with her body and the way that movement, and she just kind of like flops over. I mean, it's insanely good. And there's no surprise there. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. All you single folks out there, are you taking the proper precautions when you meet up with strangers for dates? Opening yourself up to others to find love doesn't mean you have to close yourself off from safety. Unfortunately, there are too many sketchy weirdos out there who will try to invade your personal space without your consent. And sometimes that invasion is centered in one particular area, your titties. That's why you need the Titty Taser. The Titty Taser is a discreet device you can clip onto a bra, shirt, or whatever piece of clothing covers your jugs. Using anywhere from 5,000 to 20,000 volts of electricity, the Titty Taser will send a painful surge through all grabs, bumps, and smushes. There are many ways these pervs will try to cop a feel. The old bump into and grab, the oops, I slipped in a sauna and need to grab them to break my fall, or the brazen face smush, where the creep only uses his face to feel your boobs. It's rare, but it does happen. The Titty Taser will ward them all off after the first zap. Order a Titty Taser by calling 555-BUZZY-BOOBS. For a limited time, you can bundle our safety kit for only $39.99. The bundle includes the Titty Taser and the Pussy Whipper, our genitalia protector that whips a grabby Gus with the force of some of your ancestors. The Titty Taser, the best bosom buddy since Tom Hanks. And we're back. All right, in the extras, there was an inside look, and this is what I referred to before. JLD talked about doing that physical gag in the theater at the end, and she was so excited that she was going to be able to disappear. You know, there's the railing, but there's also that little ledge at the bottom. And so she loved that she was like, oh, I'm definitely going to just flop down and disappear behind that ledge. There's something about that. She's like a Jack in the Box. It's so fun to be able to just fall and be completely out of sight when you fall. Dave Mandel as well. He was just praising the physical comedy prowess of JLD. He's like, I don't think people realize what a brilliant physical comedian she is. So I just wanted to point out how he pointed that out. And that, yeah, Dave Mandel, I know that. In the commentary, which was done by Dave Mandel, the writer of this episode, he talks about Bob's storyline. So, being deaf, conveniently being deaf when work is being assigned. And it was based on a boy that Dave Mandel went to high school with. Same thing. He had a hearing aid and he always seemed to hear totally fine, except when there were tasks given or work given. And he used to enrage the rest of the students because he would just use his impairment to get out of work. And he just thought that would be a really funny storyline on Seinfeld. Oh my gosh. And then I totally freaked out because Dave Mandel himself in the commentary said how Seinfeld is pretty jacket obsessed. I was like, oh my God, yes, I'm doing a jacket watch. This is amazing. So I was just very delighted by that, as you can imagine. Okay, so in the deleted scenes, they showed the alternate ending, which involved Bob and Peterman walking into Elaine's office. So this is after the theater incident where Bob puts his boobs in her. Bob puts his face in her boobs. So you could tell he's pretty uncomfortable walking in, like he's nervous to see Elaine. Peterman's asking for some assignment from Elaine, and she's pulling a Bob where she's like, "Oh, I don't know what. I can't hear you." So Peterman gets pretty annoyed at this, and he's like, "This is very unbecoming of you, Elaine, to make fun of him." So they both exit, and she calls after him. She's like, "No, Mr. Peterman, it's because of the theater last night." Peterman comes back to tell her that Bob is pretty broken up about what happened last night. So he's going to send him to Italy for a month to work on a handkerchief. So he exits, and Elaine says, "Son of a bitch." So Bob returns and pokes his head in, and he said, "I heard that." He points to his earpiece. "New batteries." I don't know. This is confusing again. It would make sense that her ears were blown out, but the way she acts this scene is like, "No, I'm going to do what Bob does." And she's kind of smiling. She's like, "I'm sorry, what? I can't hear you." So it seems like she's faking, but then she's like, no, I can't hear because of the theater. So it's like, okay, well, that would make sense. But then when he comes back and he's like, "I heard that," and he points to his earpiece and says, "New batteries." I'm like, okay, so was he not hearing? I'm so confused, you guys. Once again, useless questions, never going to be answered. Answers don't even matter in the grand scheme of things, but whatever. This is what I'm wondering. Please let me know what you guys think. Does he hear ever or what? I don't get it. All right, now it's time to move on to Greg's Sack Lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor to this podcast, and every week he sends in a sack full of his thoughts. He says, "Overall, I'm pleased that we finally have an episode where George isn't the star of the damn show. I love the guy, but he gets the funniest plots every single time almost. Here, he is at least teamed up with Jerry, and so Elaine gets more of a solo plot at work, which I love to see. My feelings regarding J. Peterman aside." That said, I don't love this episode because everything with Jerry, George, and the dumb jacket is not funny, just like Kramer falling asleep at the wrong times isn't funny to me. Elaine and Rob Schneider save this episode. Okay, this is interesting. Yes, I'll get more into the Kramer storyline. No one's going to be surprised with what I say there. But I do enjoy the George and Jerry stuff a little bit, but I agree. I think the most interesting, even though it's totally simple, just a guy faking his deafness, maybe to get out of work, it's the funniest. It absolutely is the funniest because everything else is a little too convoluted. And sometimes the simplest plots make the funniest plots. Next in Greg's Sack are his favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says, "I love when Elaine is testing Bob's hearing and tries flirting behind him. Of course, Peterman walks by in a very Three's Company misunderstanding sort of way, and it screws Elaine over yet again." I was going to actually mention Three's Company again as well. Yeah, this misunderstanding thing, like I said, we've seen it before, and I think we're going to see it again a few times. Just Peterman walking by and totally misunderstanding. Seems like it's his shtick a little bit. Greg goes on to say, "Another moment I love is Elaine's A+ physical comedy in the scene where she's in the theater with Bob, both her trying to fight off his advances and then when she tries on the hearing aid. This is Michael Richards caliber movement, and not much has to even be spoken during any of this." Agreed. Totally agreed. The physical comedy JLD performs in this episode is definitely Michael Richards' level, which is a huge compliment. And for me, it definitely saves a pretty non-comedic part of what she had in this episode up until that point. Next are Greg's scene swap ideas. He said, like I said in my overall thoughts, I don't like anything but Elaine's story in this one. So I would swap everyone else's stories for a change, and that's a very big chunk of this episode. The Friars Club is such an institution here in New York, and I wish they would have played that part of this up more than they did, instead of the jacket and the circus thief. George wanting to be the Gatsby's was a funny concept, but because Susan barely had any part of it, and Susan's friend was somewhat of a buzzkill, this didn't work as well as it could have. That's actually a really good point as I read that. Like I said, they gave Hallie like a pinch of personality. You know, she gets one little moment with Jerry, like making fun of him. But yeah, you know, I think if they played up George's fantasy, like everyone having so much fun, like even in that scene, like I know what they were going for. It's like, oh, the men always talk to the men and the women always talk to the women. No one ever talks to each other because men and women are different. Burr, burr, burr. No, like how about they make this into, they present it more of like that fantasy. Maybe Hallie is hilarious and Jerry, like make her more of an it girl so that it feels more of a loss when all of it falls apart. I don't know. I think that could have, to your point, Greg, could have made it a lot funnier. Next, Greg says, also, instead of the ending being about Kramer's girlfriend being arrested and Jackie Childs showing up, I think we needed to see what happened when Elaine returned to work. Did Bob say something to Peterman? We never see Bob again, so there's no real closure to this story, which I'd have preferred. Okay, well, I did explain that deleted scene. And I will say, I think that was better still, even though I'm confused by it. New batteries. Okay, so did he just have dead batteries the whole time? Is that a new earpiece? I don't understand. Yeah, I agree. Maybe they still needed to keep that scene, tweak it a little bit. But yeah, the Connie thing, I think they just love to throw in Jackie Childs whenever they get a chance. But that goes nowhere either. So yeah, the tag was pointless and just gave more time to that stupid storyline. Lastly are Greg's extra thoughts. He says, Rob Schneider is kind of always the same to me. That wide-eyed sort of simpleton who is likable even if he's always causing problems. He's cast well in this part of Bob, and JLD plays off of him very well. I like how he doesn't even try to kiss Elaine. He just lunges for her breasts over and over. It's a silly visual, and it makes me laugh. Exactly. Yeah, no, I think that's why. I mean, I still find it creepy. But it's so over the top weird and silly that it's like, you can't be that offended by it. It's just like, what are you doing? Like, it's so bizarre. And Dave Mandel kind of made it seem like Rob Schneider came up with that. Like he just like went for it. They were like, all right. But yeah, I think it works better because it's weirder and in a weird way funnier than if he just kept trying to kiss her. Like if he kept trying to go in for a kiss, that would just have been, it wouldn't have been funny at all. It would just have been really disturbing to see. Although I do think this is disturbing in a different way, but I'll get more into that with my final thoughts. And Greg's final thought is, are we to believe the maestro is finally gone for good? When she spilled the wine on the poster in the last episode, he wouldn't have known that was her. And she was really into him, and he was so happy she was back. I just think a mere mention of him would have been nice. They do that a lot on this show. Boyfriends and girlfriends just vanish. Yeah, totally. You know, this is an episodic show, so it's not a series. So that's to say, you know, each episode is pretty independent of each other. They don't carry too many things from episode to episode. And that's for the purpose of like, hey, you don't have to catch up with episodes. You're not going to be lost if you just hop into a random episode. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of fine with it. The Maestro's so I think the closure was like, he would have figured out she spilled the wine, or maybe he would ask her or something. And so it would have been, the cat would have been out of the bag anyway. But yes, of course, boyfriends and girlfriends vanish all the time. And I think that's how they prefer it on Seinfeld. Thank you so much for your thoughts, Greg. Now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. All right, moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. It has to be the physical gag at the end. Best moment of the episode by far. I would say in second place, the whole pushing off Bob of, when he's lunging towards her, because that's physical comedy. It absolutely is. But, and here I use the word, it is also disturbing. He's forcing himself onto her. And while the move is bizarre, it's weird enough to be kind of funny because it's so silly. Like it's the silliness of it that kind of takes away the disturbing portion, but it's still disturbing. I don't know. And of course, I'm looking at it through a 2024 lens, of course. So, at the time, I know I just thought it was funny. Like, what a weirdo. Gross, but funny. But now I'm thinking, oh my God, like he didn't stop after the first, like she's not interested. And like he still goes in the second time. Like for me, through this lens now with what I think is a very good thing, being more aware, being more sensitive, being, very much on the side of, hey, don't fucking assault women, which I've always been on that side, but you understand there's more heightened awareness about it. Yeah, it's just such a weird thing, but it is disturbing to me. And my final notes for the episode, as I said in the beginning, Elaine's plot is very simple, but it's funny. I just wish they went in a different direction with it. Trying to dovetail it in with the whole Flying Sandoz Brothers show, it just didn't work. And so like when you boil this down, the premise is a dude trying to get out of work by acting deaf. That is classic Seinfeldian comedy, but this just got too complicated for me. I just didn't like it. Went in a weird direction. Now I would have swapped out all of the stupid ass Kramer sleep stuff, being thrown into the river, all of that, for maybe like he and Elaine trying to figure out if Bob was faking. There's always a lot of hilarity when Elaine and Kramer team up, so that would have been great. We'd get some Michael Richards and Rob Schneider together, which I think could have worked very well. So I think, Da Vinci sleep, get out of here. Connie, who cares? We don't need this elaborate being thrown into a river. It's not funny. So I think somehow if Kramer gets roped into like, hey, Kramer, you can help me figure this out. Something like that. Those two teaming up would have been fun. Now, the one funny part of this episode for Elaine is when she wears the earpiece and gets her ears blown out. And we still could have gotten that funny bit. JLD still could have done some brilliant physical comedy. So I think we still could have gotten there, changing the plot around. And I would have preferred that. I would have preferred a plot that didn't require Elaine getting assaulted first. And on that note, I think that's all I can say about the Friars Club. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to rate and review the podcast. It really does help. Also, please follow Hot and Heavy on social. On Insta, it's Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you next time.